Hello, my name is Masha, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to make this beautiful watermelon bracelet. If you've been following me for a while, you might remember that I already did a tutorial on a watermelon bracelet. However, that's a slightly different pattern. If you are newer to bracelet making, I would actually recommend you try that pattern first. It's slightly different, but it still looks like a watermelon, and it's much simpler to make. This one isn't particularly difficult, but it might be a bit confusing for beginners just because there's more steps and there's more types of knots involved. So I'll leave the tutorial for that bracelet linked in the card and in the description so you can watch that if you want to. Now, this bracelet is more of the traditional watermelon pattern. If you've been around in the bracelet making world, you've seen this one many times. It is definitely a favorite among bracelet makers. However, as I said, it is a little bit complex just because there's a lot of steps involved and it uses all the different types of knots. So if you are a complete beginner, I wouldn't recommend starting with this one. This is more of an intermediate pattern for you to work up to. If you are a beginner, I recommend starting with my beginner's guide video, which will also be linked in the card and in the description. Just like an overview for beginners to know where to start, what to do, and all of that stuff. Going into this tutorial, I expect that you've already made a few bracelets and are very familiar with the basic knots, so I won't be showing you how to make the knots. I'll just be telling you which ones to do. And one more thing that I forgot to say while I was filming this tutorial: when you are securing your strings to your workspace, make sure to leave 10 to 15 centimeters of string before you start making your bracelet so you can then come back and make ties out of them. But all of that being said, let's get into this tutorial. So for this bracelet, you are going to need 4 colors, and if you are following the colors of the watermelon, those colors are going to be red, brown, and 2 shades of green. For each of the green strings, you only need 1 string per color. For the brown, you're going to need 2 strings, and for the red, you're going to need 6 strings. All of these strings are going to be roughly 1 meter long. To start this bracelet, I'm going to be doing a half triangle end, which I will briefly explain. It's not that difficult if you've never done it before. I highly recommend you try it with this bracelet because I think it looks really nice. But if you need a more in-depth tutorial, then I recommend watching my triangle ends tutorial, which goes into a lot of detail. That tutorial will be linked in the card and in the description for you. You can also start this bracelet in other ways, including not making any kind of special start at all, and just doing an overhand knot and starting the tutorial as I'm going to explain it. But I highly recommend you try the half triangle end because I feel like it comes out really well. And it's not more complicated than actually making the bracelet itself, so if you've never tried it again, I highly recommend you do. So looking at the pattern, you can see that there are 2 stripes of green, and I'm going to start with that first stripe. So we need to get the strings into that order. And the order is dark green string, light green string, then red, brown, 3 reds, 1 brown, 2 reds. So again, I'm starting with a half triangle end, and I need to bring the dark green string out first. So what I'm going to do is take that dark green string and make a forward knot onto the entire bundle of strings. Next, I look at the string I need to bring out next, which is the light green. So I take that out and make a forward knot onto the entire bundle of strings, excluding the green string we've already taken out. Then let's do the same with the red string, do a forward knot on the entire bundle except the 2 strings that I've already taken out. And then the brown string, and then the red strings, and so on in the order that we need the strings to be. And there we go, I've finished that half triangle end, and now the strings are in the order that I need them to be. And it's really that easy, which is why I highly recommend you try this. But again, if you need more information on how to do this and also do this for other bracelets, the triangle ends video and the more on triangle ends video, which I did a part 2 on, would be able to help you out. Anyway, all that being said, let's actually get into the tutorial part. So the first row is super simple. The first row is literally just a candy stripe row. With the outermost string, which is the green one, we're going to make backward knots along all of these strings individually until we reach the end. Make sure you're getting the strings in the correct order, which is the order in which we brought them out. But other than that, it's just a simple candy stripe row with backward knots. So let's do that. And there we go, just like that, the first row is now complete. The second row is very similar. We take the outermost string, which is now the light green string, and we do a row of backward knots along all of these strings individually, except we don't bring the string all the way to the edge like we did the first time. We're going to exclude that dark green string, put it off to the side, ignore it, and just do backward knots across the rest of the strings, one by one, just like we did. Alright, the second row is now done, both the green strings are on the left. The third row is a little bit more complicated. We grab the first pair of strings, which is red and a brown, and we do a backward forward knot with the red onto the brown. After that, we grab the next red string, which is to the left of the brown. We do a forward backward knot with this string onto the brown, and then with the same string, with the same red string, we do backward knots along all of the rest of the strings, except the two green strings that are off to the side. So again, a forward backward knot with the red string onto the brown string, followed by backward knots in just a kind of row of candy stripe all the way to the left along the rest of the strings. Alright, that first row of red is now done and time to do the seeds. You might notice that as we're going along, all of the strings that we've brought to the left, we keep ignoring. And we're going to continue doing that because we're doing sort of a triangle shape here. So until we come back and we close this part of the watermelon off with another row of green, we're going to keep ignoring the strings on the left. So that's just going to be a running theme with this pattern. So with the seed row, there's going to be quite a few forward, backward and backward forward knots. Starting with the first knot, grabbing the two outermost strings, we've got the brown and the red. The brown does a forward backward knot onto the red, creating that first seed. We grab the next red string, the one to the left of the brown now, and that red string does a forward knot onto the brown, creating that gap between the two seeds. We grab the next red string to the left of that brown, and then we create another seed with the brown string doing a backward forward knot onto the red string. That same red string we just did a knot onto now encounters the second brown string, and it does a backward forward knot onto this brown string to create that gap between the seeds. And of course this next brown string encounters the next red string and just does a backward knot onto it. Not a backward forward knot, just a backward knot. And finally, the last red string that this brown string encounters is going to do a forward knot onto that brown string, again creating that gap. Alright, the first row of seeds is done. The next row is super simple. It is once again just a candy stripe row. Every time I try to film, some kind of vehicle has to come up right by my window. Very convenient, thank you. This outermost red string does a row of backward knots along all of these strings, excluding the strings that we've put off to the side. Next, we are dealing with another seed row. The two outermost strings are brown and red. We do a forward backward knot with the brown onto the red to create the first seed. Grabbing the next red string to the left of the brown, we do a forward knot with the red string onto the brown string to create the gap between the seeds. Then we grab the next red string and we do a backward forward knot with the brown onto the red to create the second seed. And finally, we do a forward knot between the two red strings. The next row is once again a candy stripe row, so grabbing the outermost string, which is this red string, is going to do backward knots along all of these strings until it reaches the end, excluding the strings that we've already put off to the side. This time it's only going to be 3 backward knots because there's only 3 strings left. We're reaching the end of this portion, so this is going to be the last seed row. Grabbing the 2 strings on the right, the brown and the red, the brown string is going to do a forward backward knot onto the red. Then the next red is going to do a forward knot onto the brown. And finally, we've just got 2 red strings left. Let's do a forward knot between them. The pattern says a backward knot, but since the strings are the same color, it doesn't matter, and I'm more comfortable with forward knots. Alright, the right side of the watermelon is now complete. The left side is exactly the same as I just explained, except flipped. So for all the forward knots, it's going to be backward knots. For all the backward knots, it's going to be forward knots, and so on. I'm going to explain this again, but I'm going to go a little bit faster this time, grouping multiple rows together so we can get through this quicker. First, we're going to start off with a row of forward knots. The outermost green string, the dark green string, is going to do forward knots along all of these strings together. Then once that string reaches the end, I'm going to put it off to the side and focus on the next green string, which is going to do the same thing, a row of forward knots along all of those strings, excluding the green string that we've put off to the side already. So same thing as we did at the start here, except instead of backward knots, we're doing forward knots. Let's do that. Alright, with those first 2 rows complete, we now need to make a row of red. We start by taking the 2 outermost strings. This red string is going to do a forward-backward knot onto the brown string. Once that is done, the next red string is going to do a backward-forward knot onto that same brown string and continue with a row of forward knots along all of these strings until it reaches the end, excluding the 2 green strings that we've put off to the side. The next row is a seed row. We start with a backward forward knot with the brown onto the red that's to the left of it. Then the next red string is going to do a backward knot, followed by another forward backward knot with that brown onto the red string to the right of that. Now the red string that we just did a forward backward knot on is going to do another forward backward knot onto the brown string to the right of it. That brown string is then going to do a forward knot onto the next red string, and then the red string after that is going to do a backward knot onto the brown. I did say I was going to go a little faster this time. If you are a little bit confused, then you can always refer back to the pattern. I'm always highlighting the row that I'm mentioning. And then of course you can always scroll back to the beginning where I was explaining a little bit more slowly and just flip the knot that I'm saying. So if I'm saying a forward backward knot in the first part, then in this part it would be the backward forward knot, and so on. But hopefully this is understandable. Once you've already done the first one, maybe you're a little bit more familiar with it. If you have any feedback, leave it in the comments. I'm trialing a new way that I'm doing these tutorials. This next row is once again very simple. It's just a candy stripe row with the outermost string, which is this red string, doing a row of forward knots along all of these strings, excluding the ones that are off to the side. The next row is a seed row. So the brown string is going to do a backward forward knot onto the red string. Then the next red string after that is going to do a backward knot onto the brown string. And I accidentally just did it without explaining it, but then once that is done, the brown string does a forward backward knot onto the next red string, and the 2 remaining red strings do a backward knot between them. Next, we have another row of candy stripe. The outermost string, which is this red string, does a row of forward knots, of which there are just 3. And finally, the last seed row, we take the brown string, it does a backward forward knot onto the red string to the left of it, and then the red string to the right of it does a backward knot onto the brown string, and then onto that red string as well, finishing off this piece of the watermelon. And there we go. At this point, the pattern repeats itself. You can rewind to the beginning of this tutorial, and I have timestamps in the description to make it easier for you to do that. And then you can start making this again. All of the strings are in the correct positions for you to start again at the top. And that's really all you need to do. Continue repeating those 2 triangles, the right piece and the left piece, over and over again until the bracelet reaches the length that you want. When I'm getting around to finishing my bracelet, I would probably like to finish it with the green closing off this portion. So if I were to finish this bracelet, I would probably do 2 rows of green and then do the half triangle end at the end. To finish with a half triangle end, you take the 2 outermost strings, and if it's angled this way, you do a forward knot between them. If it's angled that way, then it would be a backward knot. And then you take the next string and do the knot on both of those strings at the same time. Then you take the next string and do a knot onto the entire bundle at the same time, and so on until you run out of strings and you bring them all to a point. Again, if you want a more in-depth tutorial on that, I have one available and it's linked in the description. Alright, I'm gonna go finish this bracelet off camera and I'll be with you once I'm done. And there you have it. This is what the bracelet ends up looking like. I finished my bracelet off with a pair of twisted ties, for which I have a separate tutorial which will be linked in the card and in the description. I think this is a gorgeous pattern. It definitely deserves to be a classic in the bracelet world, and I can see why so many people absolutely love it. It's also such a fun and summery design. I think it's so cool. And if you end up making it, make sure to tag me on Instagram because I'd love to see your creations. But there you go. If you've got any questions about this bracelet, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer as many as I can. And I hope you enjoyed today's video. Before I go, I want to give a special shout out to my patrons and especially my top supporters. Thank you so much for your support. I truly appreciate it. And if you also want to become a patron and support the work that I do on this channel, the link for that is in the description. But in any case, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you in my next one, which will be a very exciting announcement. So see you soon. Bye.